German New Guinea was the first part of the German colonial empire. It was a protectorate from 1884 until 1914 when it fell to Australian forces following the outbreak of the First World War. It consisted of the northeastern part of New Guinea and several nearby island groups. The mainland part of German New Guinea and the nearby islands of the Bismarck Archipelago and the North Solomon Islands are now part of Papua New Guinea. The Micronesian islands of German New Guinea are now governed as the Federated States of Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, Nauru, the Northern Mariana Islands and Palau. The mainland portion, Kaiser-Wilhelmsland, was formed from the northeastern part of New Guinea. The islands to the east of Kaiser-Wilhelmsland, on annexation, were renamed the Bismarck Archipelago and the two largest islands renamed Neu-Pommern and Neu-Mecklenburg. Due to their accessibility by water, however, these outlying islands were, and have remained, the most economically viable part of the territory. With the exception of German Samoa, the German islands in the Western Pacific formed the Imperial German Pacific Protectorates. These were administered as part of German New Guinea and they included the German Solomon Islands, the Carolines, Palau, the Marianas, the Marshall Islands, and Nauru. The total land area of German New Guinea was 249,500 square kilometers. History Early German South Pacific presence The first Germans in the South Pacific were probably sailors on the crew of ships of the Dutch East India Company. During Abel Tasman's first voyage, the captain of the Heemsk was one Holman, born in Jever in northwest Germany. Hanseatic League merchant houses were the first to establish footholds. Johann Caesar Godefroy, son of Hamburg, headquartered at Samoa from 1857, operated a South Seas network of trading stations especially dominating the copra trade and carrying German immigrants to various South Pacific settlements. In 1877 another Hamburg firm, Harnsham and Robertson, established a German community on Matupi Island, in Blanche Bay from which it traded in New Britain, the Caroline, and the Marshall Islands. By the end of 1875, one German trader reported, "German trade and German ships are encountered everywhere, almost at the exclusion of any other nation." German colonial policy under Bismarck In the late 1870s and early 1880s, an active minority, stemming mainly from a right-wing national liberal and free conservative background, had organized various colonial societies all over Germany to persuade Chancellor Bismarck to embark on a colonial policy. The most important ones were the Colonial Verein of 1882 and a Society for German Colonization founded in 1884. The reasons for Bismarck's lack of enthusiasm when it came to the subject of Germany's colonial possessions may become clearer through his curt response in 1888 to the pro-colonial, expansionist remarks of Eugen Wolff, reflected in the latter's autobiography. After Bismarck had patiently listened to Wolff enthusiastically laying out his plans that he sought to pitch employing several illustrative maps, Bismarck finally interrupted his monologue, "Your map of Africa there is very nice, I have to admit. But you know, my map of Africa is here. In Europe. You see here is Russia, over there is France. And us, we are here a euro right in the middle between those two. That's my map of Africa." Despite his personal objections, it was no other than Bismarck himself who, after finally giving in, organized the acquisition of much of what would become the German colonial empire. The very first attempts at the new policy came in 1884 when Bismarck had to put German trading interests in southwestern Africa under imperial protection. Bismarck told the Reichstag on June 23, 1884 of the change in German colonial policy. Annexations would now proceed but by grants of charters to private companies. Australian aspiration and British disinterest The edition of November 27, 1882 of the Augsburger Allgemeine Zeitung carried an article which the colonial secretary of the British colony of New South Wales drew to the attention of the editor of the Sydney Morning Herald and, on February 7, 1883, the paper published a summary of the article under the heading German Annexation of New Guinea. The argument lifted from the German paper began by stating that New Guinea fell into the Australian sphere but had been neglected. Although the Portuguese had explored in the 16th century, it was the Dutch from the 17th century, who seemed better satisfied with the country than other European nations had been, but they had overreached themselves and had fallen back towards Java, Sumatra and Celebes. Recent explorations had given the basis for reconsideration. It is considered useful by geology and biology people as holding in its forests the key to solve problems. A profitable field for cultivation, but London had only sent missionaries to save souls. As we Germans have learned a little about conducting colonial policy, and as our wishes and plans turn with a certain vivacity towards New Guinea, according to our opinion it might be possible to create out of the island a German Java, a great trade and plantation colony, which would form a stately foundation stone for a German colonial kingdom of the future. The publication of the Sydney Morning Herald article caused a sensation, and not just in the colony of New South Wales, over the border, in the British colony of Queensland where the shipping lanes of the Torres Strait and the Bec de Mer trade were of commercial significance. The Queensland Premier, Sir Thomas McIlwraith, who led a political party considered to represent the interests of the plantation owners in Queensland, drew it to the attention of the Queensland Governor together with the general situation in New Guinea and urged annexation of the island. He also instructed the London agent for Queensland to urge the Imperial Colonial Office to an act of annexation. Impatient with the lack of results from this procedure, Premier McIlwraith on his own authority ordered a Queensland police magistrate in March 1883 to proclaim the annexation on behalf of the Queensland Government of New Guinea east of the Dutch boundary at 141E. When news of this reached London, the Secretary of State for the Colonies, Lord Derby, promptly repudiated the act. When the matter came before Parliament, Lord Derby advised that the British Imperial government were not ready to annex New Guinea in view of its vast size and unknown interior, the certainty of native objections and administrative expense. German New Guinea Company equals. On his return to Germany from his 1879–1882 Pacific expedition, Otto Finch joined a small, informal group interested in German colonial expansion into the South Seas led by the banker, Adolf von Hansemann. Finch encouraged them to pursue the founding of a colony on the northeast coast of New Guinea and the New Britain archipelago, even providing them with an estimate of the costs of such a venture. On November 3, 1884, under the auspices of the Deutsche New Guinea Compagnie, the German flag was flown over Kaiser-Wilhelmsland, the Bismarck Archipelago and the German Solomon Islands. Albert Hall joined the German Colonial Office in 1895 and until 1914 played a major part in New Guinea's administration. He was an imperial judge at Herbert, Deputy Governor of New Guinea, and Governor. As a judge he made 3 reforms: 1. The appointment of Lulue, village chiefs; 2. Attempts to integrate the Tole people into the European economy; and 3. The protection of village lands, which led him to recommend the ending of all alienation of native lands. After 1901 Hull attempted to apply his system to the whole of New Guinea, and although his success was limited, exports rose from 1 million marks in 1902 to 8 million in 1914. He was forced to retire because of disagreements with Berlin officials, and became an active writer on New Guinea and was a leader in German colonial societies between the wars. Lutheran and Catholic missions equals. By the mid-1880s German church authorities had devised a definite program for missionary work in New Guinea and assigned it to the Rhenish Mission, under the direction of Friedrich Fabry, a Lutheran. The missionaries faced extraordinary difficulties, repeated sickness from the unhealthy climate, psychological and sometimes violent tensions and fights between the colonial administration and the natives. The natives rejected European customs and norms of social behavior. Few embraced Christianity. In 1921 the Rhenish Mission Territory was handed over to the United Evangelical Lutheran Church of Australia. Missionaries sponsored by the Catholic Church in Germany had superior resources and influence, and proved more successful. They put more emphasis on tradition and less on modernization, and were more in line with native worldviews and traditions. European morality and discipline were often adopted, as were notions of dignity and prestige. Imperial German Pacific Protectorates equals. In the Germano-Euro-Spanish Treaty of 1899, the German government agreed to pay Spain 25 million pesetas for the Caroline Islands and the Mariana Islands. These islands became a protectorate and were administered from German New Guinea. The Marshall Islands were added in 1906. Forced labor policy to expand the highly profitable plantations, the Germans needed more native workers. The government sent military expeditions to take direct control of more areas from 1899 to 1914. Instead of voluntary recruitments, it became a matter of forced mobilization. The government enforced new laws that required the tribes to furnish 4 weeks of labor per person annually in payment of a poll tax in cash, thereby forcing reluctant natives into the workforce. The government did explore the choice of voluntary recruitment of laborers from China, Japan, and Micronesia, but only a few hundred came. After 1910, the government tried to ameliorate the impact by ending the recruitment of women in some areas and entirely closing other areas to recruiting. The planters protested vehemently, and the government responded by sending troops to fresh areas to impose the labor policy. World War I. Following the outbreak of World War I, Australian troops captured Kaiser-Wilhelmsland and the nearby islands in 1914, after a short resistance led by Captain Karl von Clausewitz and Lieutenant Robert Lord Bob von Blumenthal, while Japan occupied most of the remaining German possessions in the Pacific. The only significant battle occurred on September 11, 1914, when the Australian Naval and Military Expeditionary Force attacked the low-power wireless station at Beta Paca on the island of New Britain, then Neu-Pommern. The Australians suffered 6 dead and 4 wounded, the first Australian military casualties of the First World War. The German forces fared much worse, with 1 German officer and 30 native police killed and 1 German officer and 10 native police wounded. On September 21, all German forces in the colonies surrendered. However, Lieutenant Hermann Dieser, a German officer, and some 20 native police evaded capture in the interior of New Guinea for the entire war. Dieser was on a surveying expedition to map the border with Australian-held Papua at the outbreak of war, and remained outside militarized areas. Dieser claimed to have penetrated the interior of the German portion in his 1920 book Voyage unter Cannibale. These claims were heavily disputed by various German missionaries, and Dieser recanted most of his claims in 1932. After the Treaty of Versailles of 1919, Germany lost all its colonial possessions, including German New Guinea. In 1923, the League of Nations gave Australia a trustee mandate over Nauru, with the United Kingdom and New Zealand as co-trustees. Other lands south of the equator became the Territory of New Guinea, a League of Nations mandate territory under Australian administration until 1949, when it was merged with the Australian Territory of Papua to become the Territory of Papua and New Guinea, which eventually became modern Papua New Guinea. The islands north of the equator became the Japanese League of Nations mandate for the South Seas Islands. After Japan's defeat in World War II, the former Japanese Mandate Islands were administered by the United States as the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, a United Nations Trust Territory. Postage stamps. The first postage stamps of the colony were issued in 1897, as overprints reading Deutsche Euro/New Guinea on the contemporary stamps of Germany. In 1901, the yacht issue included stamps for the colony, inscribed Deutsche New Guinea. The 5 picofarads, 10 picofarads, and 5 values were reprinted in 1914 on watermarked paper and inscribed Deutsche New Guinea, but these did not reach the colony before it was occupied and were never put in use, nor was the reprint of the 3 picofarads value made in 1919. The stamps are available to collectors today at prices ranging from about $1 up to $500 for a validly used 5M stamp. Very few stamps of the higher values were ever used, and their prices are €10 20 times higher than for mint copies. Fake cancellations exist. After the Australian occupation, stocks of the unwatermarked stamps, along with some registration labels, were overprinted with GRI, and a value in pence or shillings. See New Britain for further details. See also, New Guinea, list of colonial heads of New Guinea, British New Guinea, Dutch New Guinea, Unseriuch language, Kaiser-Wilhelmsland. References. Further reading, Peter Biskup, Harlet Herbert UAE, 1896 Euro 1898, The Genesis of German Native Administration in New Guinea, in K.S. Ingalls, History of Melanesia, Canberra Euro Port Moresby 1969, 2nd ed. 1971, 77 Euro 99. Firth, Stuart, Albert Hall, Governor of German New Guinea. In Griffin, James, Editor, Papua New Guinea Portraits, The Expatriate Experience. Canberra, Australian National University Press. 1978, 28 Euro 47. Firth, S.G. The New Guinea Company, 1885 Euro 1899, A Case of Unprofitable Imperialism. In Historical Studies 1972. 15, 361 Euro 377. Firth, Stuart G. Arbeiter Politik in Deutsch New Guinea vor 1914. In H1 QuarterTter, Joachim. Mayers, Reinhard. Papenfuss, Dietrich, Editors, Tradition und Neubeginn, Internationalforschungen zur deutschen Geschichte im 20. Jahrhundert. Karl Paragraph LN, Karl Hiemanns Verlag KG. 1975, 481 Euro 489. Noel Gasher Euro June Whittaker, A Pictorial History of New Guinea, Jacaranda Press, Milton, Queensland 1975, 312 p. ISBN 18627300253. Whittaker, J. L. Gash, N. G. Hookey, J. F. and Lazier J. Documents and Readings in New Guinea History, Prehistory to 1889, Jacaranda Press, Brisbane 1975/1982, Firth, Stuart, German Firms in the Western Pacific Islands, 1857 Euro 1914. In Journal of Pacific History 1973. 8, 10 Euro 28. Firth, Stuart G. German Firms in the Pacific Islands, 1857 Euro 1914. In Moses, John A. Kennedy, Paul M., Editors. Germany in the Pacific and Far East, 1870 Euro 1914. St. Lucia, University of Queensland Press. 1977, 3 Euro 25. Firth, Stuart, German New Guinea, The Archival Perspective. In Journal of Pacific History 1985. 20, 94 Euro 103. Firth, Stuart, The Germans in New Guinea. In May, R.J. Nelson, Hank, Editors, Melanesia Beyond Diversity. Canberra, Australian National University, Research School of Pacific Studies. 1982, 151 Euro 156. Firth, Stuart, The Transformation of the Labour Trade in German New Guinea, 1899 Euro 1914. In Journal of Pacific History 1976. 11, 51 Euro 65. Firth, Stuart. Labour in German New Guinea. In Latukafu, Sin, Editor. Papua New Guinea, A Century of Colonial Impact 1884 Euro 1984. Port Moresby, the National Research Institute and the University of Papua New Guinea in association with the PNG Centennial Committee. 1989, 179 Euro 202. Moses, John, and Kennedy, Paul, Germany in the Pacific and Far East 1870 Euro 1914, St. Lucia QLD, Queensland University Press, 1977. ISBN 9780702213304, Sack, Peter, ed., German New Guinea, A Bibliography, Canberra ACT, Australian National University Press, 1980, ISBN 9780909596477, Firth, Stuart, New Guinea under the Germans, Melbourne University Press, International Scholarly Book Services, Carlton, Vic 1983, ISBN 9780522842203, reprinted by Web Books, Port Moresby. 1986, ISBN 9980570,105. Foster, Robert J. Komen and Tanger, A Note on Writing the History of German New Guinea, Journal of Pacific History 22 No. 156 €64. Historiography. Mary Taylor Huber, The Bishops are Unregistered Trademark Progress. A Historical Ethnography of Catholic Missionary Experience on this Epic Frontier, Smithsonian Institution Press, Washington and London 1988, 264 pp. ISBN 0-87474-544-6. Mary Taylor Huber, The Bishops are Unregistered Trademark Progress, Representations of Missionary Experience on this Epic Frontier, in Nancy Lutker House, Sepic Heritage. Tradition and Change in Papua New Guinea, Crawford House Press, Bathurst, NSW 1990, 663 pp plus 3 maps, ISBN 1-86333-014-3, pages 197 €211. Keck, Verena. Representing New Guineans in German Colonial Literature, Panaiduma, Mitteilungen zur Kulturkunde, Volume 54, pages 59 €83. External links, Archives of the German Colonial Society, Deutsche New Guinea.